Have you ever thought about how many medicines, the ones you really count on, actually need a sort of hidden helper just to work properly? It's kind of surprising, right? Our bodies, well, they aren't always the best at absorbing drugs super efficiently.
Hmm.
So these really important compounds often need a bit of assistance, to get where they need to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of the fundamental challenges in pharmacology. I mean, you can have the most potent drug imaginable, but it's basically useless if it can't dissolve right or if it breaks down too quickly or just doesn't get absorbed into the bloodstream effectively.
Exactly. And that's where these, well, unsung heroes we're talking about today come in.
Yeah.
Cyclodextrins. They're these really clever ring-shaped sugar molecules. Think of them like tiny molecular taxis or maybe containers for drugs. They help navigate them through the body, protect them, make sure they actually do their job.
They're essentially silent partners in so many successful medications, but their impact, it's really profound and incredibly widespread.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack these remarkable cyclodextrins. We want to explore what makes them so special, look at their kind of quiet but totally revolutionary journey in drug development over, the last 5 decades. We'll shine a light on some of the huge blockbuster drugs that, frankly, wouldn't exist without them, and then take a peek at their future potential. We're going to try and cut through the jargon, give you the surprising facts, the key insights, so you'll really get why these invisible helpers are just so critical in modern medicine. Okay, let's start with the basics then. What exactly are cyclodextrins? When we say that, we're talking about a family of cyclic carbohydrates, right?
That's exactly right. Imagine individual sugar building blocks. We call them glucopyranose units, and they're linked together, forming a ring. Now, depending on if you have 6 or 7 or maybe 8 of these units in the ring, you get what we call alpha, beta, or gamma cyclodextrins. Alpha, beta, gamma. Each one has a slightly different ring size, and that size difference is really critical for what it can actually do.
So they're kind of like different sized molecular cups, or I've heard the analogy, like donut holes.
You know, that donut hole analogy is actually pretty fitting.
Yeah.
Their structure, it's unique, and that's what gives them their, let's call them superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
Picture that donut. The hole in the middle that's hydrophobic, it doesn't like water. But the outside surface, the part facing the world that's hydrophilic, it loves water. So this setup allows them to form these non-covalent host-guest complexes with other molecules, like drugs. Think of that water-hating donut hole cradling a tiny water-averse drug molecule, sheltering it, while the water-loving exterior lets the whole thing move easily through a body, which is mostly water.
Ah, that paints a really clear picture.
Okay.
So if they're these amazing little carriers, what are the actual, concrete superpowers they bring to medicines? How do they change how drugs work for us?
Well, their benefits are really quite transformative. They tackle some of the biggest hurdles in drug development. First off, they dramatically enhance solubility. So many active drug ingredients just don't dissolve well in water. That's a huge problem. By tucking the drug inside that hydrophobic core and showing a hydrophilic face to the world, the cyclodextrin basically lets the poorly soluble drug dissolve. It makes it act like it's water soluble.
Which means, if I'm getting this right, it directly affects how well the medicine gets to where it needs to go in the body.
Precisely. And that leads straight to the second big benefit: improved bioavailability. When a drug dissolves better and gets absorbed more effectively, more of it actually reaches your bloodstream to do its job instead of just, passing through unused. Cyclodextrins also significantly enhance stability. They shield sensitive drug molecules from things like light, oxidation, enzymes that can break them down. That protection can be crucial for extending a drug's shelf life, keeping it potent. And a really appreciated benefit, especially for kids, is taste masking. Lots of medicines taste truly awful, right? Bitter, metallic. Cyclodextrins can cleverly hide that unpleasant taste, making them much easier to take.
It's pretty incredible to think these tiny molecules have such a massive impact today. But how long have they actually been doing this in medicine? What did that journey look like? This isn't some brand new discovery, is it?
No, you're right. It's not new at all. The story goes back several decades, actually. The very first drug marketed as a cyclodextrin complex was a prostaglandin E1 formulated with alpha-cyclodextrin. That launched in Japan as an injection way back in 1976. That was really groundbreaking. And then beta-cyclodextrin prostaglandin E2 tablets followed not long after that.
Wow, 1976. So Japan was really ahead of the curve on this one.
Yeah.
How long did it take for Europe and the U.S. to catch up?
Well, Europe's first cyclodextrin drug came in 1988. That was beta-cyclodextrin peroxicam. The brand name was Brexin from Chiesi in Italy. The U.S. market, yeah, it took a little longer. Its first introduction wasn't until 1997. That was the hydroxypropyl beta-cyclodextrinitroconazole solution, Sporanox from Janssen.
Okay, so it started with those specific launches, but it really feels like the growth just took off after that.
Yeah.
What do the numbers tell us?
The sheer quantity of these drugs must show a huge shift in how pharma relies on them now. Oh, the growth has been continuous and frankly staggering. It really highlights how they went from being a sort of niche novelty to an absolutely indispensable tool. Just consider this. Back in 2004, a research audit found only about 24 active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, formulated with cyclodextrins. By 2007, that number was up to 35, then 48 by 2013. Fast forward to September 2022, that same audit found as many as 129 APIs. And the latest peer-reviewed audit from 2023 confirms it's holding steady, around 130 approved pharmaceutical ingredients using either the parent cyclodextrins or their modified versions. This kind of exponential growth, it's not just adoption, it shows cyclodextrins are now a mainstream solution. They're solving complex drug delivery problems, enabling drugs that might have been impossible otherwise.
Wow, going from 24 to 130 APIs in under 20 years? That's a really profound shift. It speaks volumes about how critical they've become. So looking at the current market, which types of cyclodextrins are really leading the charge now? And what are some of the big success stories, maybe drugs we'd actually recognize?
Right, so in today's market, it's really beta-cyclodextrin, and maybe even more importantly, it's modified derivatives that are dominating. We're talking specifically about hydroxypropyl beta-cyclodextrin, that's HPEC, and sulfobutyl ether beta-cyclodextrin, or SBECD. HPPD was actually the first semi-synthetic one used in final drugs. It was developed to get around some safety issues with the native beta-cyclodextrin, and it offers a superior safety profile plus excellent solubility enhancement. It's super versatile. You find it in oral meds, injectables, even eye drops. Then there's SBECD, often known by the brand name Captisol. It's another really powerful solubilizer and stabilizer, especially good for weekly basic drugs, and you see it mostly in injectable or parenteral formulations. The native ones, like plain beta-cyclodextrin, they still have a role, but mainly in oral tablets and capsules.
Okay, so these modified versions sound like they were a real game changer. Can you give some solid examples? Which of these cyclodextrin-enabled drugs are the real heavy hitters, the blockbusters?
Absolutely. One truly standout example is Sugamadex, brand name Bridion. What's fascinating here is that the cyclodextrin itself, a modified gamma-cyclodextrin, isn't just helping the drug, it is the drug, the active ingredient. It's used to rapidly reverse muscle relaxation after anesthesia, and it's a huge blockbuster estimated annual sales globally around $3.2 billion, with $1.764 billion just in 2024. Approved EU 2008, US 2015.
Wait, the cyclodextrin is the drug. That's incredible.
It really is quite an innovation. Then you have fingolimod or Gilenya. That's an HPCD formulation for multiple sclerosis, pulling in about $5 billion a year. Even the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine used HPCD for stabilization. Huge global distribution, estimated annual sales around $1 billion. And you'll likely remember remdesivir, Veklury, that uses SBECD. It saw this massive, though temporary, sales peak during the pandemic hit an astounding $5.6 billion in 2021. That actually made it the highest grossing cyclodextrin drug in history. Sales have tapered off now, about $1.8 billion in 2024, but still significant.
Yeah, that really highlights how fast these technologies can make a global difference in a crisis.
It certainly does. Other big ones include carfilzomib, Kyprolis, that's an SBECD oncology drug showing steady growth, $1.5 billion in 2024. Then there are antifungals like voriconazole, VFND, and posaconazole, Noxafil 4, both using SBECD, doing significant numbers. Noxafil alone was $177 million in 2024. And itraconazole, Sporanox, the HPCD one we mentioned earlier, still brings in around $600 million. It's also worth noting, like with Sugamadex, other cyclodextrins are the active drug 2, HPECD for Niemann-Pick type C disease, and alpha-CD, Belitrim, for atherosclerosis regression.
So, yeah, these are just some obscure things mixed in. They're critical parts of major, often life-saving drugs we might have heard of or even taken. The total money involved here must be absolutely enormous.
It really is. The total estimated annual sales for all these cyclodextrin-containing drugs now tops $13.8 billion. And that number, it's not just impressive financially, it really underlines their evolution. They went from being niche additives or excipients to being critical value-driving parts of modern medicine. They enable better patient outcomes, drive huge market value, and that financial success, in turn, actually fuels more research into complex diseases. It creates this kind of positive feedback loop for innovation.
That's a fascinating point, how these invisible helpers generate so much revenue that then gets plowed back into the innovation that needs them. What's also interesting is the global picture. Where is this innovation happening? What are the growth trends worldwide for cyclodextrins?
Yeah, the market's definitely global. Right now, North America leads the pack, holding about 40% of the market share. That's roughly $200 million in 2024. Europe is next with about 30%, around $150 million. But the fastest growing region right now, that's Asia Pacific. It accounts for 23% of the market, about $115 million. And it's growing at an impressive 8.0% compound annual growth rate, or PAGR. A lot of that growth is being driven by the ramp up in pharmaceutical production and R&D in places like China and India.
That's a significant pace of growth, showing a real global embrace of this technology pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And if you look historically, the overall market ballooned from maybe $150 million back in 2010 to about $500 million in 2024. That's a CAGR of 9.0% over that period. What's driving it? Well, a few things. The increasing complexity of new drug molecules, many just need that solubility boost. Also, supportive regulations help, like HPCD getting orphan drug status for Niemann Pick C, or agencies like the EMA setting clear guidelines, and of course, just continuous tech improvements in the modified cyclodextrins themselves, making them safer and more effective.
Okay, so given this strong growth and ongoing innovation, what's actually coming down the pipeline? What new cyclodextrin-enabled treatments might we see reasonably soon?
The pipeline looks pretty healthy, especially for formulations using Captisol, that SBECD derivative. In the near term, there's an intravenous version of topiramate. They're aiming to submit the new drug application, the NDA, in Q4 2024. That could mean U.S. approval late 2025. Another interesting one is Captisol-enabled iohexol. That's a contrast agent for medical imaging. It's moving through phase 2 trials now, with a potential regulatory submission maybe by 2028. Looking further out, cyclodextrins are being seriously explored for even more cutting-edge stuff like in gene therapy and personalized medicine. Their ability to protect delicate biologic compounds is key there. Also, new delivery systems like cyclodextrin-based nanoparticles and expanding treatments for more rare diseases.
That all sounds incredibly promising. But, with all this success, what are the challenges? It can't all be easy, right? What hurdles do cyclodextrins still face?
No, you're right. There are definitely challenges. A big one is the high production cost. Making these things, especially the modified derivatives, can be complex and expensive. Then there are regulatory hurdles. Navigating different rules in different countries, especially for new formulations or in emerging markets, takes time and money. And for injections using high doses, there can be concerns about potential kidney safety related to the cyclodextrin itself, which needs careful study. We also have to consider the environmental impact. Production uses chemicals and energy, so there are questions about sustainability. And of course, there's always ongoing competition from other drug delivery methods and excipients.
So despite those hurdles, where do you see the biggest opportunities? Where can cyclodextrins really shape the future of medicine?
Well, despite those challenges, the opportunities are still vast and pretty exciting. Cyclodextrins are really well suited for biologics, and gene therapy stabilizing those sensitive molecules is a huge need. They're also crucial for advancing personalized medicine, allowing for drug formulations tailored to individual patients. Plus, there's a constant push for more patient-friendly formulations, things like combination products, better taste, easier delivery methods to help people actually take the meds. And interestingly, because they come from a natural source starch, there's potential to align them with green chemistry principles and more sustainable manufacturing, which is becoming increasingly important.
We've really covered a lot today, exploring how cyclodextrins went from being this scientific curiosity to just indispensable tools in modern pharma. They dramatically improve how drugs perform, patient outcomes. It's quite the story. Enhancing solubility, stability, masking taste. These tiny molecular taxis have truly changed how medicines get delivered.
Yeah, their journey's been pretty remarkable, from that first drug in Japan in the 70s to enabling blockbusters like Sugamadex, and even playing a role in the global response to COVID-19. With around 130 approved drugs now using them, they're more critical than ever. It really shows that some of the biggest innovations are happening right down at the molecular level.
So maybe next time you or someone you know takes a medication, just take a second to think about that invisible, ingenious molecular architecture working behind the scenes. Could these tiny sugar rings be the key to unlocking even better, more accessible treatments for the world's toughest diseases in the years ahead? Maybe even making medicine truly personalized for every single one of us.
It's a really compelling thought. And looking at that pipeline of new treatments coming through, it definitely feels like we've only just started to tap into their incredible potential to transform healthcare.
So stay curious about those unseen innovations that power our world. Because sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs really do come in the smallest, most unexpected packages.